such. Now, I was sharing with a person earlier. Here's the beauty of these solder clips. Again, I just grabbed these. Let's say this is a design that you have that's going to go on a base and so forth because you want that elevated. You've done saw piercing in there and stuff. You get these soldering clips and you start clipping this together, and this is just a quick demo. I would get, if I was going to do that, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, what do I have to do to that before I can actually get ready to solder? I have to take this, get that clean by sanding and stuff, flux it really good, cut some pieces of solder and sweat them together or heat that up so those solder pallions flow. Now it's ready. Then I sandwich them together with flux and I sweat solder so when it's, at the right temperature, the solder flows. Some people stick feed, depending on things. They're heating and they're going like this. I never liked that. I personally never liked that. So, and sometimes I will certainly keep a little extra metal around the, well, let's see. I would keep some extra metal around the outside of things so I can actually put some pallions around the outside. When I'm doing a bezel, though, and I'm going to be soldering that, this is the little pieces of wire I've cut right up against the bezel and the plate. Can you all see that? Now, obviously this is very large so you guys can see it, and these would be pieces of solder wire laid up against, on the inside, up against the bezel. Here's another reason I don't like using sheet solder. If I use sheet solder, it's going to either lay flat on the base or it's going to lay this way. I want it right in that corner. That's why I love the wire. It's right up tight. See? And so what I would do is get everything ready, and then this is fluxed, and then I put a piece of solder there, and I very carefully either take my solder pick or my tweezer and push that over against the edge of the bezel and do that. Now, obviously those are gigantic things, but I'm showing you again in the drawing. Put it to scale. See? Let's say that you got this all ready and you soldered, and wow, it's soldered around and you're looking and there's a gap right here. Don't panic. Just cut another small piece and lay it right there and reheat that, and you'll be surprised. It'll just catch and just flow around. See, and right at the last, I will take my torch and I'll just kind of flow it around. See, and get that to work for me. Now, a couple of things. First of all, this is, if you have a large bezel, wherever I drop the thing, there. A large bezel like this, maybe a 30 by 40 tab or something large, like Veronica showed me, they can be hard to get level on a plate sometimes too. So I will take a little rawhide mallet and I'll get on a real nice flat hard surface and I'll very gently tap. And I'll keep checking and get it as level as I can. And please understand, if it's not flat, there's always going to be a space and then a place where it's solid. You tap on the hollow and bring that down. Don't hit too hard or it goes the opposite way and then it spoons up. Okay? Anyway, but what I do then, folks, is I take a soldering clip very gently and clip the bezel itself down in maybe 4 places. You with me? Mm-hmm. And boy, it just works perfect. Works perfect. Now, let's say that particular situation now has to be soldered again to a bracelet or something else. This is where this jigaborough comes in handy because it comes up over the bezel inside, see? Because I can't be touching that bezel now and smashing that. I've got to get these two together. You see what I'm saying? You innovate. But if you don't know something's available, you wouldn't know to do that. So it's just amazing. I'm going to leave these with you guys, by the way. Maybe you might even, somebody might want to print it out as a reminder. And of course I showed that there's 4 of them on there. And so that works out very well. Okay, now, let's say that you have your bezel and it looks like this. See how that's all twisted and so forth? And you've annealed it. I take my sanding stick and I lay it on the table and I burnish it. And I take the wrinkles out by burnishing it with this wood tool. Look at that. See, it's coming out. Now, maybe it also has a little bend in it. You turn it like this, very gently, and you can get it nice and straight. And you know how I check if it's straight or not? I take a ruler like this, and I lay it up against there and make sure it follows that ruler right along. And I know it's straight. I don't guess. See? So, let me think. Okay. If you have larger pieces, and this will not serve everything, there's a couple of other possibilities and such with torches. This is called a turbo torch. Plumbers use this. They will use this with 4-inch copper pipe. This sucker throws some heat. I also used a Prestolite torch, which is made for acetylene only. Oxygen and acetylene are what the welders use. But after I found out about this, boy, I'll tell you, this thing is really great. And talk about cooking some steaks on the barbie. See, that thing generates some heat, and I can turn that up back here and get even more heat. Now, where is all your heat on a torch? Right out there. See that blue inner cone? Don't stick your stuff in here. Get it out in here. That's where your heat is. Very important to know that, too. Now, please understand, this would be for something large that some of you may or may not get into. I don't know. But at any rate, and these work off of propane or MAP gas, which burns a little hotter than propane. But at any rate, and this is a soldering pad. The stuff is non-asbestos now. Asbestos had been around for years, and in the early days we didn't know, and I had one, but this is a non-asbestos pad, and all this stuff's available through Rio Grande and so forth, and you can get that, and that works out pretty darn good. The one thing I forgot, and I'm sorry, I was fearful, and I forgot to bring my burnishers for actually setting the bezel. There's 3 types. There's one that is straight, there's one that's got a little bend in it, and then there's another one on the wood handle that comes up like a letter T, and then it's polished here, and that's kind of a bezel pusher. I have the curved one because, and by the way, they're polished on both sides, and they're shaped like this in cross section. With me? They have kind of a sharp edge, and you go around the bezel and you burnish it over the stone. Now, if you're doing an oval cab, put the solder joint on the long side, not on the end, because where the solder is, the bezel is still a little stiffer. Not bad, but it's a little stiffer, okay? So, now, this is interesting. Veronica shared the teardrop. I would go ahead, my first inclination certainly would be to go ahead and get the bezel around that, and I'd either put the solder joint here or up here. Probably over here on that long side. For God's sakes, you don't put it on the little side. And the reason being, folks, you will not get the bezel to flow over that. I don't know what they call these things, but I've seen people selling them in that. It's a rectangle or a square stone that's rounded a little. Sometimes they're even flat. I've set those in a bezel, but I have to, on each corner, cut it so you actually bring tabs in. See? That's okay, because you're not going to bring the corner around there anyway. You're going to have this wrinkled mess. See? If the bezel is too high and you start to come over, it can have a tendency to wave and you don't get it laying beautifully flat. So what I would always do is take my bezel material, there's two things I'll tell you, and lay it against the stone and get, as I tried to demonstrate here, just a little bit of space between the stone and the bezel. That's all I need to bring that over and hold that stone in place. Otherwise, of course, they would fill the base with sawdust or something and bring the stone up to the point where they lie. So I would take the bezel, once I got it to the, nice and straight, I would lay a ruler there and take my scribe and I'd scribe a line and I would split that bezel. Very carefully split that bezel so it was of the right height. See? Now, Veronica shared some smaller stones, which is great, and even one this size. Once the bezel's made, before I solder it in place, and this is important, I would take my sandpaper, and usually the 320 grit, and I would get a real solid surface, and I would hold the bezel like this, and I would sand. Then I would turn it around, and I would sand again. Sometimes I could only use one finger, maybe two, in this case 3. If you push too hard, you roll it right up. It catches and that's one of those, see? So I'm just sharing that with you. Patience. Patience. And I flip it over and I would clean it up again. Then I'm ready to go. Kind of what you're hearing is, it's sort of like jewelry surgery, isn't it? The only good thing is you can bury your patient if it dies. But at any rate, if you do everything as good as you can and pay attention, you're going to have a success and you're going to be very happy with it. Things come up. Veronica is welcome to share my email address with the club. If you say, Joe, I don't know what happened or whatever, well, and you can even call. I think you have my cell phone number, but I give it. You can call and I'll help you and answer a question, if something comes up and so forth. So, because I can tell you, and then when you start to do things, you may not remember something that was critical, and something could happen, and things like that. So, and I'm trying to see if there was something else maybe it was important that I didn't share. Oh, yes, there is. There is. When I am doing, and I'm going to pass these around, I mount these little guys, and there is a bezel in there. There is no way in the world that I can hold the stone and get a bezel around it. It ain't going to happen. I get a circle template. You can buy these at Blick Art Supply, Michaels and such. I would take the stone and lay it down, and I would see what one of these holes fits the stone. Wow. Then I take a small drift punch, and I put that over in that hole. Then I take one of these 1/2 millimeter pencils, and I make a line around it. And then I'd wrap the bezel around this. Get it all ready, bring it together, and then I see if it fits my stone. And I go about the same soldering process. That's how I make the bezel for those little things. See? Because there is no way, believe me, there is no way I can do that without that stuff. And I've mounted a lot of those little things in certain jewelry projects. You might like them as, some nice elements there to show off your jewelry piece and such. So I would say anything probably from a 10 millimeter down requires this type of thing. Especially now as I've gotten older, my coordination isn't like it was when I was 20 years old. A lot of things. At any rate, so I really rely on this stuff. Really do. Any other questions? I know I've taken it off. Well, we're not making a potato chip. We're making a tool that looks like a flat blade screwdriver. And so this is going to make a little bit of noise, but I bring that down about like this. See that? Okay? And then, this is important, when you do the other side, Make sure they are on the same plane. Don't turn it and make a propeller. So hold this like so. By the way, when you're doing this, you hit in the same place and you move the metal. You don't follow the metal around. And you make it look like a flat blade screwdriver. Okay? Got it? Now, what I'm going to do here, I had it measured before because I want to grab it in the center the best I can, but I rubbed it off. So what I want to do here, from hitting it, it seems to have gotten just a little magnetic. There we go, about right there. Okay, and then I take these long nose pliers, I grip that little baby about, let's say about right there, and I bend it down, and I bend it down. Well, that one's a little off, but I'll fix it. There we go. I bring them down like that, and then I bend the end up a little bit so that it doesn't catch the jewelry and mess it up. If they aren't perfectly even, it doesn't matter. The jewelry doesn't care. And there's your soldering set.